Thank you so much for joining us for yet another episode of Successful Men Talk here on the Golden Channel, Channel 265. Today, I'm joined by a gentleman who's going to educate us a lot. His name is Marcus. He runs an organization called Autophagy and Fasting. He's an autophagy and fasting coach, which I'm sure is something very foreign to most people. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Tim.
I'd love you to introduce yourself. We'd love to know who Marcus is before we get to hear what autophagy is.
Thank you. I started out when I left school and I studied physiotherapy. So it gave me some background around medical. And I decided not to continue that physiotherapy journey and decided to go into the marketing and advertising space. And I'm actually a recovering media executive, but my health took a turn about 3 years ago, and I needed to drastically pay attention to my health. I had 40 centimeters of my colon removed, and I was in ICU for about 28 days. And so that really shook me into understanding that I was probably one of my worst enemies in my health journey. And I needed to get out of my way as such, so that I could actually get more in tune with my body, understand what is going on in my body, and listen to my body. And when I understood also the connection between emotion and health, that was something that I didn't expect, because I think as an executive, or as a business person, and we live in these high-paced environments with lots of outputs around performance and around optimizations, and those sorts of things are big words, and consumption and money and revenue. These are big words that business likes to use, and we get lost in that, and we forget just the basics. How to listen to your body. And I find particularly in men, men don't seek to understand their health. They don't seek to improve their health or understand what's going on in their bodies. And so many of my customers are ladies, and I find that ladies are far more committed to healing naturally. So I think, and I'm not a pharmaceutical hater. I just don't think that pharmaceuticals are sustainable for your body.
Can you take us back a little bit? If we're talking of autophagy and fasting, what are we talking about?
Okay, so autophagy is from the Greek word to eat thine self. So in summary, in your body you get a lot of debris over time, and that can be caused by food, by trauma, by stress, and really the environment that you are exposed to on a daily basis. So your water sources, your food sources, these are big contributors to the cellular stress inside our bodies. And if you like to think about it as junk that is now, has been collected inside your cells. And, if you speak to people, they say, well, I'm just getting older. Well, age, yes, happens, but one can also reverse aging and or certainly halt aging. And we do that by using the practice of autophagy. In 2016, the Nobel Prize for Medical Research was won for autophagy, and since then the amount of research that is coming out of published environments and research labs and doctors and professors that are endorsing and learning more around autophagy, it's incredible. And I think fasting is one of the only things all religions agree on. Whether you're Christian, Muslim, whether you're Hindi, it doesn't really matter. We all agree that fasting is part of a connection to our spiritual spiritual connection with God. And so fasting is not a new practice. Understanding its benefits and understanding how to maximize your outputs from fasting is what autophagy is. And there's a very big difference between intermittent fasting, which is all the rage at the moment. If you go onto the internet, it's everywhere. And it's being hailed as the weight loss a miracle, you know. And while it is useful to keep your calories, you reduce the number of meals that you're eating, and in doing so, reducing the number of calories that your body is consuming. That has some benefit, but taking it further is how do we understand the benefits of autophagy? And autophagy are brain repair, heart improvement. So the cardiovascular system is something that really benefits from autophagy. Another big benefit is stem cell production. So about 20 years ago, there was a big move to have your child's umbilical cord frozen and put on ice, as they would call it. And then that would then be used if your child ever picked up any dread disease, and you would then harvest those stem cells and then put them back into the person. And while that's very, very useful and very expensive, you don't need to, because you can actually generate stem cells from your own body, and you can do that for free. And that's really the power of autophagy. Some of the other benefits is metabolic reset. So never before have we ever been fatter, sicker, and more depressed as a society than today.
And what causes all those things, Marcus? Because we are very fat, we are very sick, we are really not coping even mentally.
That's
At
right.
the moment, we are not coping with anything.
That's right. And so when we go back to the discussion about debris or junk hanging out in your body, that's really the output of this life that we're leading. But most of that is actually connected to your hormones. And understanding how that all fits together is very important. But one of the hormones that we are understanding more and more every day is a hormone called insulin. Now, we know insulin from the medical field, treating diabetics, where insulin is used to assist diabetics in managing their blood sugar levels. But unfortunately, there is a much bigger story to insulin, because when you have raised insulin levels in your body, what your body is not able to do is your body's not able to repair. And so if you think about high insulin levels and the body's inability to repair, that means that we don't allow the body its natural repair process, which is making us sicker and sicker and sicker. So I always say to people, you've either got to be in the store zone, and if you have high insulin levels, your body will store energy and store that energy as fat, and that's how we're getting fatter. And if we look to see high insulin levels don't let the body repair, that makes us sicker. And then the mental brain fog that we were all experiencing. So 4 years ago, I would walk into a room and I would forget why I was in the room. And my memory was I was really battling with my memory. So immediate recall. And I call that brain fog. And that brain fog is something that you can reverse with using autophagy and fasting as a methodology.
You spoke of the fact that usually where we are right now, right, in as much as we are not trying to bash at the pharmaceutical world,
absolutely.
right, we are encouraged to take supplements every day. We are at a point where we are encouraged to take supplements for basically everything, right? How do we get around that vicious circle? Because from where we are sitting, we keep increasing the supplements that we have to take.
Yes. So I think it's very important to understand the role of supplements in your life. Yes, we have situations where we are not necessarily getting all of the vitamins or minerals or amino acids from our food sources, because unfortunately our food system has really come under a lot of pressure. The chase for big revenues and cheaper food. Here's a good example. If I was to get a takeaway generally costs about 50 Rand. If I was then to try and get a fruit salad, I'd be paying much more than 50 Rand for that fruit salad. And so our food system in itself is under a lot of pressure. And so in terms of going back to understanding why we would need to take supplements and to understand supplements' role in your life, I think it's also important to understand how supplements are delivered to the cells in your body. So that's very important to understand. And I always try and use the analogy of a sponge. Your liver is a sponge. It has 500 functions that it produces and that it goes through every single day. It's amazing. It's one of the only organs we can cut in half and it will regrow. So the liver is that important to your body. And often we don't understand liver health. And if you can think of the liver as a sponge, if I were to pour water onto that sponge and it was a clean sponge, the sponge would absorb the water and I would squeeze it out, no problem. Can you imagine if I put a layer of oil over the top of that sponge and then try to pour water onto it? The water would just run off. And that's a good story or a good analogy to use when understanding what minerals and supplements one should be. So if you have a liver that's compromised or a fat in your liver, and based on our current diets, majority of us have fat in our livers, and it's called unprocessed proteins that are sitting out in your liver that are not allowing your liver to clear itself properly. And then if we then add supplements to that top of the sponge with the oil on it, do you think it's going to be absorbed? Not at all. And so it's very important to understand how to get the maximum value from supplements that you're taking, from the food that you're eating. And so we've got to really go down to the root cause and to really take care of ourselves, iteratively over time. Because we think that there's a silver bullet and we think that there's an answer based on one solution, and it's so much more than that. Good hydration, good food sources, keeping sugars and insulin levels low in your body. These are things that we really should be driving, as opposed to trying to figure out whether or not a scoop of a supplement might give me additional energy.
You're watching Successful Men Talk here on our Golden Channel, Channel 265. To continue with this conversation and more, you can be in touch on S_men_make, or you can contact us on WhatsApp number 071 481 6091. Before we went onto the show, you were just explaining about the water that you're drinking that is different.
Yes.
I'd love you to give us details more on the hydrotherapy, because most of us don't even know what hydrotherapy is.
So thank you, Themby. Yeah, I'm just gonna push the button because I don't know if you remember back in science, back in our science classes, we used an anode and a cathode, and we created bubbles around those two nails in the water, and that's really what I'm doing here. What I'm changing is I'm changing the molecular structure of water, because there was research done in about 200 different destinations globally, where from an aerial view you saw the vegetation around these water sources that were lush, that were thriving, that were growing.
Are you saying that the water that we are drinking at the moment is has no much benefits like that?
Yes. So at the moment, what I'm doing is, as I charge the water and create hydrogen, I'm able to effectively open the cell to be able to transport my vitamins, minerals, food, and energy better into my body. So that's why we use hydrogen. It's a transporter. It opens up the cell, and it helps the body expel free radicals. Here's a little bit of science, and I'll try and keep it light. So in all free radicals, and we know that free radicals are not good for the body at all. Free radicals are a positive charge, whereas hydrogen is a negative charge. And if we just apply our magnets, where we took our positives and our negatives, and those two were drawn to each other, that's exactly what I'm using the hydrogen for, is to take all those free radicals, bind them to a hydrogen molecule, and then for the body to expel it.
I asked you that because I need you to take us to the fact that you were explaining about the liver and the oil, right?
Yes.
Considering that everything we're eating is just not right, what are we supposed to be drinking? What are we supposed to be eating? And how do we try to live healthier lives?
Yeah, Themby, it's a very good question. I mean, I think there's a lot of information out there There's been a lot of try this, try that. There's a lot of fad diets out there. We are confused. Yes. And if we go back to basics, in terms of the liver itself, I spoke about high insulin levels. If we look at our food sources, in majority of our foods, there are hidden sugars. So we don't really understand the impact of sugar into our bodies. And your liver is compromised with that story or the example that I gave you about fat inside your liver. And really what it is unprocessed glycogen. And glycogen coming from the word glucose. So we are eating far too much refined sugar products, and that is now causing a backup in the liver. So in other words, to answer your question about how should we approach it, fasting has given me that as an output and helps the body in many, many ways. And the most important way it helps is the ability for my body to cleanse itself, to actually move those fatty deposits and those unprocessed glycogen storages out of my system. And that happens when I stop putting calories into my system. And what that means is that my body then does a quick stock take. It goes into a state of emergency and says we're no longer getting glucose in via any calories. What is the body going to do? Well, it's so amazing. It switches fuel sources, and it actually goes and uses our fat stores as well as the junk that we were talking about earlier in autophagy. And that's what actually fuels our vital organs when we don't take sugars in.
So are you saying that even if it's not for religious purposes, if there's one thing that we're supposed to be doing is fasting?
Absolutely. It's one of the things that were lost. I think as I mentioned, it's one thing that all religions agree on is fasting and the benefits spiritually. But I think what's been lost over the generations has been the impact that fasting has from a physical perspective and to your physical well-being. Now we also know that without a little bit of suffering, we don't really grow.
Exactly.
And actually abstaining from something gives you something back. And it not only does it give you a spiritual prowess and spiritual power, but it also gives you the ability for your body to cleanse itself. And that's been lost through the generational translations.
A person, right, who's say I've just heard of autophagy and fasting, right? Can I just start with just the fasting before implementing the other, would we call medications that you have?
Yes, I think they're just aids. So what I've got in front there is minerals. So we don't get enough minerals out of the water sources that we're drinking, unfortunately. And that's just as a byproduct of recycling of water. We don't have clean water sources as we did many, many years ago. And so our water qualities have been compromised. And I'm really quite passionate about water in itself because, we almost 80% of our body is made up of water. So it's so vital that we get the right, good quality water into our system. But one can definitely start to improve your health by just fasting. I think it's very important for you to understand the needs of your body, your age, your gender, where you are hormonally, particularly for ladies. So ladies that are approaching change of life, this is going to happen. We can do it gracefully, or we can do it kicking and screaming, as I would always like to say. And you need to just understand that fasting isn't a one-fits-all solution, and we really would encourage people to engage with a fasting specialist, to spend some time understanding and doing research around your age, your gender, your ethnicity. These are all contributions, and some underlying issues. If you've got high blood pressure, how long should you fast for? If you've got diabetes, what are the impacts that fasting might have? Because if we go back to the traditional approach around diabetes, diabetics are encouraged to eat regularly. And that then goes against what fasting would suggest, which is not to eat. So it really is totally opposite to what we've been led to believe is useful to the body. But if you think about it more closely, you could understand that if I wasn't actually putting sugars into my body, there wouldn't be a need for my body to create insulin. And I think it's just down to those basic principles. But yes, people should fast. everyone should be fasting. I'm astounded that not more people are doing it, because the benefits are incredible. You know, stem cell repair, brain repair, metabolic resets, cancer suppression, mental fog clearance. These are all great benefits that you can do for free, and your body has the ability to heal itself.
We are going to a short break. We'll be right back to hear more on autophagy and fasting. You're watching Successful Men Talk here on your golden channel, channel 265. Don't go away.